And do you want to pin me? Great. And I'm going to push the blue thing that says, got it. So sorry. So I want to speak today about becoming one's own best friend. I remember early on when I came in contact with the Dhamma, hearing Dhamma talk by Ayya, who was really the first Western Theravada fully ordained bhikkhuni. She took ordination in 1989 in LA. And she talked about the path as being the greatest love story ever. And that spoke deeply to me, that we are on this journey, we are on this love affair, we are on this journey of becoming intimately aware of what is happening and being very open to receiving that with care. And I mean, the end of the path, or the breakthrough, will be to realize that there isn't a self here. All that's here is causes and conditions and what's arising in the present moment. But that relationship, then we'll understand it's not with myself, it's just with the present moment. The Buddha is very much pointing us in this direction. And of course, he has to use the language of this relationship with oneself. So I hope that that's not confusing, that there isn't a self, but I'm talking about our relationship with ourself, which is really our relationship with what's arising, our relationship with what's going on, our relationship with the present moment. But for now, we'll be talking about our relationship with ourselves, because until we have that breakthrough, this is the world that we live in and the world that we operate in. So there's a very interesting discourse in the Udana, which is in the Khuddaka Nikaya, the minor collection. And it's between the king of Kosala and his queen. The king is Basenadi and the queen is Malika. And the king, they're up on this patio, kind of looking out over the kingdom. And the king turns to his wife, the queen, and says, "Is there anyone more dear to you in the world than yourself?" And the queen answers, "No, there's no one in the world more dear to me than myself. What about you?" And the king says the same thing. And then the king goes and relays this conversation to the Buddha. And the Buddha says, that's exactly right. That is wisdom, to understand that there is no one more dear to yourself than yourself. I think for myself, coming from quite a heavily Christian background, there's been a lot of confusion in my life about this truth, thinking that was selfish. And in the Buddha's teachings, it's completely not selfish. It's completely necessary. We must care for ourselves. That is our mandate. That's our responsibility. That's what we're here to do. We're here to care deeply about what is going on here and now, and be a great caregiver, be very responsible for that. And the king, and the Buddha says to King Vicinity, having gone around in all directions with the mind, there is surely no one found who's loved more than oneself. In the same way, others each love themselves. Therefore, one who cares for themselves should not harm another. This is so essential in the Buddha's teachings. It's actually, this understanding is actually the basis for non-harm, for non-cruelty, for non-ill will. It's the basis for the precepts for keeping virtue, that I hold myself dear. Well, you hold yourself dear as well. Therefore, I don't want to cause you harm or hurt you in any way, because I understand how that would be. It's a very honest, clear, realistic motivation for non-ill will, for non-harm. Also in the Buddha's teachings, over and over and over again, he's telling many of his very close disciples, this conversation occurs several times. I can find it in almost every one of the collection of the discourses, where the Buddha is saying to Ananda or to Moggallana, many of his chief disciples, be an island unto yourself, be a refuge. So how do we do this? How do we make the inside, the internal experience, actually a refuge, actually a resource, actually a place of ease and comfort and wellness? So that's what I want to try and talk about. Because how do you do that? I mean, this really is the turning and going a different direction. Much of our life has been, I'll speak for myself, much of my life has been caring for others and being distracted and out. And the Buddha's teaching us in. And I heard a great Dhamma talk by Joseph Goldstein a couple of nights ago, and I tried to find the quote. I think it's Zorba the Greek, but it says something about it. It's in literature anyway. It's just a short, pithy phrase about any self-awareness is invariably bad news. And I think that is really a long time. We can spend quite a while on the path. When we start to go in, you have, it's like getting a fixer-upper house, you know, you realize, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff that I've not attended to, I've not taken care of. There's all this stuff going on. I remember I started meditating when I was in my late 40s, and I had I still do, I have 2 children, but they were like children then. I mean, they lived with me and they were teenagers. Anyway, I remember the first time I sat with my daughter, she was 18, and because this was all like, a lot was going on, you know, I started meditating, and then I started making all these changes, and my poor children were like, what is happening? It's like, and so it's like, okay, well, I was trying to bring them in, you know, and have things that we could talk about in ways that we could relate to one another, new ways. Anyway, so I had a bench. So I had her on a bench. We're in the living room and I set the timer for 12 minutes. And the timer goes off and my daughter, who's on a bench, just falls face forward into the middle of the room on her face. And she just goes, "Oh my God." She goes, "How do I even finish a sentence? It's a mess in there." I mean, she had an amazing insight right away, that. And so I'm just saying that as I'm sure most of us can relate to that. Like, oh my word, where do I even begin? So that's what I really want to talk about today, is just because this is where I've spent most of my time on the path, all my time on the path, frankly, at this point, trying to start being really honest about the pains that have not been felt, the pains that have not been received, the resentments that are there, the ill will, et cetera, all of the afflictive negative mind states. You have to wade through this part of the path. It's probably a lot of the path. I did hear a meditation teacher saying 80% of meditation is dealing with the 5 hindrances. That's 80%, that, and we spend a long time there. Just with this fixer-upper house, cleaning it up. There's so much to clean up. And I think it's also important for us to understand the conditioning that many of us have, coming from, many of us, a European, I always hesitant to use the word Western. I mean, what does that mean? But I mean, a European background, and even here in North America, you think about so much of our culture is about, it's very, very polarized, very, very dualistic, very, very good, bad, right, wrong. You think about it, here we are looking at the Buddha's teachings, and the Indian philosophy is not this dualistic. There's 4, right? It's yes, no, neither yes nor no, or both yes and no. It's not this yes or no. So just even to take that in, that it's like, a fish in water. Even as I'm saying this, there's still part of me that believes, but yes, there is a yes and a no. It's taken me so long to get my head around the neither yes nor no and both yes nor no, and even that, to be able to say it in a teaching, so there's quite a bit in our psyche that's the yes, no, the right, wrong really caters to the craving and to the aversion. It's almost an expression of it. And this is this is so pervasive in our conditioning. And there's a sutta where the Buddha talks about the typical response of us, of human beings, to suffering, to samsara, to the nature of life. Basically, we either get just completely perplexed, confused, overwhelmed, like, oh my word, or we go on a search for a rescuer, for a rescue. This is also something that's very, very deep in our psyches, wanting, either staying very confused and perplexed, or wanting something, someone to fix it, to make it better. And I think that this is really apparent in our culture of celebrity worship and all of the stories about Superman, and now, oh yay, we have female ones, like Marvel Woman or whatever. Like we're moving forward. Anyway, so I think it's been helpful for me to realize how deep the conditioning is about wanting to fix things and just like have an enemy and slay the dragon. This is deep in our conditioning, in our psyche. Even Hercules had 12 tasks. This is a vintage story that many of us, even if we don't know the story, so much of philosophy and of the worldviews that we've inherited are based on these myths of Greek mythology and Egyptian mythology. So Hercules, because he as a punitive, assignment, he was given these 12 almost impossible tasks, and one of them, the second one, was to slay the beast Hydra, and it was this 9-headed beast. And I'm not going to go all into the story, but he kind of trying to cut off these heads, and the middle head, the final head, was eternal. And so he slays that, and of course the head lops off and still talking because it's eternal. And so what does he do with that? He buries it. This is often this has been my response a lot to difficulty, to negativity, to opposition, to afflictive mind states, is just to try and slay them or bury them. And the Buddha is very much trying to point us in a very, very different direction. There's an amazing poster that I saw, and it's a beautiful drawing, and then the caption, it's by a man named Brian Andreas. He's an American author, illustrator. And the quote is, "Anyone can slay the dragon," he told me, "but try waking up each morning and loving the world all over again. That's what takes a real hero." Anyone can slay the dragon, he told me, but try waking up each morning and loving the world all over again. That's what takes a real hero. And I believe that is a big part of the path of waking up each morning, sitting down each sit with a very clear intention to care, to love whatever it is that's needing to come and be known and pass through and be cleared out. And this is no easy task. Carl Jung says, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The latter procedure, however, is disagreeable and therefore not popular. So that's really what I'm wanting to get at this morning, is having a very different approach, a very different relationship with the darkness that's inside, the darkness that's outside, with an understanding of it needs to come into consciousness. And this is a painful process. It must be seen, it must be known, and it must actually be loved and attended to and cared for. I think that this is the essence of all times in the sutta where it's like the Buddha saying, I see you, Mara. And almost all of the enlightened bhikkhunis at one point, I see you, Mara. What is Mara? Mara is the darkness. Mara is the Mara is the delusion that's in our minds. And and this delusion, you know, we're in the process of just one layer at a time, slowly, slowly, slowly. And then eventually it'll be so weak, this whole house of cards that we're all living under, this idea that there's a self and that things are separate. This whole house of cards eventually will collapse. But meanwhile, we have to just piece by piece, moment by moment, breath by breath, muster up the interest and the care and the courage to show up. There's a sutta that probably most of us know, the Sutta of the Dart in the Samyutta Nikaya, where the Buddha is explaining what it's like to be an arahant. And he uses the simile, the example of the darts, you know, that the person who is not an arahant, who's still got delusion in the mind, experiences a dart, a difficult thing, and then they respond with delusion, which adds another dart. And I think all of us, you know, have had the experience where then we respond to that delusion with more delusion and more aversion and you know, more dislike, etc., etc. And we have more than two arrows piercing us. And the Buddha is saying that the arahant experiences this difficult thing and it stops there because they understand. So the more we understand, the less darts we have. And it's really true. I'm sure you can all remember experiences where, you know, you're getting confused or you're getting upset, and then the voice of wisdom, the voice of another, you know, some song on the radio, whatever, something sort of snapped you out of it, and you started to have more of a big context, more of a right view, and things started to ease up and started to settle down. This is the practice. And thinking of these darts, you know, something I've been exploring quite a bit in my meditation lately is this idea, and this might not work for some people, but I'm going to offer it and then invite you to please tweak it and play with it so that it perhaps could work for you. But I've been playing a lot with the idea of sati as the mother. I know Venerable Analio always is talking about sati as his best friend. So that's another possibility. For me, mother really works because I have two children. One's a daughter, and she's a mother. She has two children, and she's really parenting the best that she can with attachment parenting. And when I'm witnessing it, it's like watching meditation, you know. And I think it's like these two arrows that sati, until the wisdom has developed enough in each of us that second arrow doesn't come. In the meantime, I think that sati mindfulness can really attenuate that second arrow. And what I mean is, I watch my daughter, her children, something will happen and they'll not get their way, or they have to wait, or they fall down and hit their head, and so that's the first arrow. And then I watch my daughter Sati, the mother, the attuned mother, the attuned caregiver. What she can do is pull out that second arrow. So the first arrow happens, the disappointment, the injury, and then there's the mother holding the child and acknowledging what's happening. Like, oh, I know it's hard to wait. I know you're feeling frustrated. I understand. And I watch that second arrow evaporate just by it being received, just by it being cared for, just by it being attended to. And so for me in meditation, a lot of times I just even can picture, the baby, there's the baby. That first arrow happens, the baby has gas. You can't change that. That's what's happening. But the reaction to it can be attended to. And the mother can just be, oh yeah, of course, I know, I understand, I see. This is what we can do for ourselves. Shine the love of our own care, our own interest, our own attention to what's actually happening, even when it's really painful or really disappointing. So I just want to conclude with one of my favorite passages right now from the Dhammapada. It's Dhammapada 43, and this is Gil Fronsdale's translation. The Buddha says, neither mother nor father nor any other relative can do one as much good as one's own well-trained mind. So, yeah, please, any needs for clarification or any comments or responses or questions, anything. We have 15 minutes for that. Yeah, yes, Marilyn.
The version in my head of that quote was that self-awareness is seldom happy news.
Ah, thank you.
I don't know if that's right or not, but that's the one that's in my head. And
at first, but according to the Buddha, it makes me think of the children's song, going on a bear hunt. Can't go over it, can't go under it, gotta go through it.
Anyway. The thing is, I recently said it to someone, that self-awareness is seldom happy news. And they said, that doesn't really make sense because there's lots of happy news in there. And I think we need to hold on to that too, because otherwise we're not going to go there. If it's all bad news, why would we do that? It's not very appealing, but there is also some very good news in there, I think, gratitude and some really nice, just being here is so good. Like, that's good news, knowing that we're here together.
I think that still locks us into the good, bad, like the happy, unhappy. I think I want to try and go one layer deeper than that. And many of us have probably had this experience where it's very significant that the Buddha talks about the noble truth of suffering. There's something very noble about that truth because it's real.
Oh, yes.
So, we're locked into this good, bad, framework. And I think that the Buddha is trying to take us one step before that.
Before.
Just knowing what's really happening. I see you, Mara. There's the freedom. There's the truth. It's soon, it's funny. Surely you've had that experience where you're frustrated or something is off. And then when you realize, oh, I'm feeling impatient. Like as soon as you can know what's really going on, there's the freedom. Is this making sense? Yes, Suzanne.
Ayya, thank you for this talk. Having grown up as a Roman Catholic and then having been a sister within the Roman Catholic Church, putting oneself in the position of, I don't want to say first, but it's almost like climbing Mount Everest to put oneself in that position. It's almost like heresy that one would do that. The conditioning is centuries old and centuries deep. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder if it's possible. So do you want to say more about the conditioning? Like, I'll give you an example. The least little thing about, well, I would prefer to do this because I don't even think that I'm even in the ballpark here, but let me give you, I would prefer to do this rather than take care of this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. And if I would go to putting myself first, the guilt will carry me forever. Mm-hmm. So then I'll take care of this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. I don't even know if I'm coming close to what you're trying to express.
Exactly it. Exactly. So according to the Buddha's teachings, how to talk about this? According to the Buddha's teachings, there's a very important sutta called the Acrobat, where the teacher says to the student, they were going to do this acrobatic feat together, where one had to stand on the other's shoulders. So the teacher says to the student, I'll watch out for you and you watch out for me. And then we can perform this and succeed. And the student says, no, you watch out for you, I'll watch out for me, and then we'll succeed. And the Buddha says that the latter, the student's understanding, is correct. So I think, yeah, that's a lot of conditioning. I also have had some of that. I don't think to the extent that you have, Suzanne. So it's just conditioning. It doesn't need to be eradicated, but it does need to be understood. So one time I heard a monk say, I'll just tell a quick story. I was, in that sandwich generation. I had teenage children, and I had a commute to work, and I had aging parents that I was trying to take care of. And what was happening is my parents were declining, and the amount of care that they were needing was ramping up, and it was beginning to be unsustainable. And I started to realize I had a lot of resentment and frustration. And I was at Birkin, and I heard Ajahn Sona say just this one phrase. He said, "Not good for you, not good for me." And then I realized with my parents, it was like, oh, this is not good for them. I couldn't disentangle from the conditioning until I understood it wasn't good for them, because I couldn't do it for myself. Can you relate to this, Suzanne? It not good for me, that kind of didn't carry any weight. But when I heard not good for them, then I realized, oh, this isn't good for them. It's not good that I'm letting them take advantage of me. It's not good that I'm letting them not face the reality of their decline by buttressing it all up. When I got, so the way out of the conditioning is wisdom, really, really sharp wisdom. So I started to realize, oh, I'm engaged in patterns that are actually not good for the other person. And when I understand it's not good for the other person, then I can unhook. So what happened was I went to my parents, and it was very awful. They were furious at me, and they told me I was selfish and mean, and like all the things that I was terrified to hear my whole life. And I wasn't the good daughter, blah, 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 blah. And that went on for, a couple of weeks, a month. And then they realized that, and then they ended up moving into a care home, and it was all beautiful. It was great. It was right. I don't know. So that particular phrase has really helped me unhook from some patterns.
This is helpful.
Yeah. And it's something you could maybe talk with Sangamita about it, because it's delusion is holding it all in place. We have a lot of conditioning, and then extra conditioning as women. And to step back and understand, I'll tell another quick story. My son was like 18 years old, and we're sitting down at a big family event, whatever. He gets up and goes and gets himself a glass of water and comes back. I was horrified. How could you get up and get a glass of water and not ask, hey, does anyone else want a glass of water? I mean, I was really like, what have I done? I've raised this horrible, selfish person, Anyway, so I speak with him, and he's like, it was just so lovely to see his conditioning. He was like, I'm thirsty. I'm going to take care of myself. And he's assuming that everyone else in the room is going to do the same thing. It was such an aha, like, yeah, I've underestimated people a lot of times by over caring, let them take care of themselves and let them rise up in their lives. Anyway.
I'd like to respond, but I don't want to hog the whatever. I'm sure other people have something to say. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think it gets very complicated when we try to take care of or alleviate the suffering of the poor, the disenfranchised, the minority. and we give our lives to this, we burn out, we burn up, and I don't know what there are conditions, there are vast amounts of people that can't take care of themselves, and that we have done that. It's called racism, it's called sexism, it's called whatever. We've done that. We've done that. And so to try to alleviate that, or to try to help as a clinician working in a free clinic, it's endless. It will never ever end. But so it's the same construct. It's the same construct, giving my life to this and thinking, I don't know. I just don't know. Ayya.
You're asking very, very good, important questions, Suzanne.
I'm not a young woman, Ayya. I am not a young woman. And to try to unpack all of this feels like I'm starting from scratch. And I don't have that many years left. So again, I know this is big. The time is coming to an end. And maybe, yeah, I need to talk more with somebody about it.
The other thing, Suzanne, is, the Four Noble Truths, to understand, we're not the cause. That samsara is samsara. Even Jesus says the poor will be with you always. This is the way it is. This is the reality that we are living in. And I think that everything I've been saying this morning, like sitting on the cushion and attending to the pains that are here, is the most valuable, the most helpful thing that I can do. And sometimes I'm actually distracting myself from my own pain by going out here and trying to fix this stuff. You're right, it's very complex, but to start to untangle it is extremely important. You can follow these breadcrumbs to tremendous wisdom. I remember visiting Birkin, and I remember looking at Ajahn Sona and going, oh my gosh, there is good selfishness. And even for me to put those two words together was like such a breakthrough for me. There's good selfishness. He's taking care of himself, and so he can offer wisdom and care and compassion and peace and equanimity to countless amounts of people. I mean, several of us here on this Zoom call are here partly because that human being took care of himself and is taking care of himself. I mean, honestly, sorry, I'm getting all ranty, but I mean, honestly, it's not like we have it a little wrong. We have it completely backwards. And it's exciting to start to go the other way.
Thanks, Ayya.
So actually, we're at time. So. Yeah, I'd love to end with a blessing chant from the bottom of my heart. And yeah, if anyone wants to stay on, I can be on for a few more minutes, because this is an extremely big topic, and I think important for us with our conditioning. And I really appreciate you, Suzanne, bringing your conditioning in. It's so strong for us. Yeah. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you by the power of all the Buddhas. May you ever be well. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you by the power of all the Dhamma. May you ever be well. May you have every good blessing. May all the devas protect you by the power of all the Sangha. May you ever be well.